Come with me as I talk about how to go from being an indie author to being published and possibly bestseller. And I am editing my book as we talk. So maybe you are working on a draft, maybe you have a whole story written, or maybe you're just writing and you're figuring out how in the world do I go and be a successful author. I was there. I didn't know anything about the publishing industry, and now I am an international best-selling author. Curious about my success level. I am on Amazon. My pen name is Alina May, and I now make a living off of books, which was my dream. So here's how you can do it too. My first suggestion would be to write the book. Obviously, you got to get that bad boy finished. But there's a lot of steps that can happen while it's being edited and all of that stuff. So the first thing that you're gonna want to do is get input on your draft, right? So you're gonna want to see what other people think of your story and of your characters. This is also called a developmental edit. You could also get people who do beta reading. So basically they are just readers who get the book before you send it to your editor. And that is so, it kind of is like what reviews will do for you, what reviews do after the book is out. You're kind of like jump starting that process, right? So that you get what people think of your story and what people think of your characters first. You can pay for it. Developmental edits are not cheap because it requires a lot of deep thought, right? So they can be big picture plot things. They can also be like smaller things. Like I had a character who, because of trauma, didn't do a certain thing in the bedroom. And I actually forgot about said trauma and made that character do that thing in the bedroom. And my beta readers were like, no, I thought that he didn't do that. And I was like, you are right. They can also tell you things like, hey, I thought this character was really unpalatable. And I've had that said to me, like, I think that, and they will like point out specific sections in the book where like, because he said XYZ, I really, really, really strongly dislike him. And it's great to have that feedback from other people. As an author, you need to have the humility to be able to accept that other people will respond to your story differently than you intended for it to be viewed. It's part of the world of consumption and art and experiences. And so if you get a really good beta or you get a developmental editor who can point those things out to you, I would strongly recommend listening. Because if you don't, you'll hear that in reviews later. And if you're okay with that, if that's like truly the vision, if the vision is for, like in my case, for the character to be completely unredeemable, go for it, right? But if the vision was that you redeem the character at some point in the story, consider making those changes. So that's the first thing you're going to do, is you're going to get either a developmental editor or a beta reader. Where you can find developmental editors, you can find them on all sorts of websites. My recommendation would be to join a community of authors and a community of readers, because as you join that community, you network. When I started, I didn't know anybody. And so I paid somebody from the UK to do a developmental edit of my first book. She was amazing. She sent me 3 whole pages of discussion on the character arcs and how there were some that were a little bit unresolved and where I could resolve them and how I could resolve them. And it was extremely helpful. As a new author, 10 out of 10 would recommend. Now that I have a little bit more experience under my belt, I typically rely on beta readers. But I've also had the chance to like handpick my beta readers. Beta readers, my phone is blowing up. Beta readers can be really helpful, but also if you only get yes men, you don't want people who are just going to say, oh yes, this is so good, right? So my analogy for that is if you are in school to be a chef and you have this meal that you're going to present to your teachers and it has a big grade point, and you want other people to taste it and you want other people to see what their thoughts are on it, you have a few people you can pick from. You can just pick from the general masses who don't really have a palate, but will really enjoy it and enjoy food, right? You could also pick from your peers, or you could pick from people who have more experience than you. If you are truly looking for a good in-depth critique of your work, I would suggest finding peers and or somebody who's been in the experience longer than you. when that comes to beta readers, I would suggest getting authors as beta readers. That's what I use. That has been the most helpful for me, because authors know why, they know what's not working and they know why it's not working, right? So if they read a scene and they're like, hey, Alina, this scene's not hitting, and this has happened to me many times because we are all growing, right? They'll be like, I just feel like this scene fell a little bit flat. And it's because I don't think that your character talked enough about the past trauma that you've been leading up to this whole time. Like, I wanted to see that come out more. And as I go back through, I'm like, oh, you're so right. Authors know how to, what's wrong and how to fix it. If you just use readers who maybe don't know how to write or haven't written a lot, they can be great, they can be amazing, and they can be great hype people. But sometimes they don't know what's wrong, and they also don't know how to fix it when it comes to a technical standpoint. So that would be my recommendation, to get those betas before you go to a line editor. And so there are multiple different editors. There's like a developmental editor, there's a line and copy editor, and then there's a proof editor. So we've already talked about the developmental editor. The line and copy editor does exactly what I'm doing right now. And so they go through and they will say, hey, Alina, you used the word stiff 5 times in the last 3 paragraphs. Can you change that? That has actually been said to me. Like, they will read line by line, and they will see, okay, does this make sense from the sentence before? That kind of thing. They will do all of the grammar. And then a proof editor is typically they will just do grammar. So they don't care that you said stiff 5 times in the last sentence, right? Typically what my editor does is she does line and copy editing first, and then her second go through, she does the last proofreading after I accept all of the changes. Editing is probably going to be your most expensive part of the process. And I would really strongly recommend you don't skip on the editing, because there are a lot of readers who are really thrown out of a story because the editing is incorrect. And I cannot tell you how many new authors I have talked to who've had a less than enjoyable experience on their first go around because they did their own editing, or and they maybe missed some things, because when you look at your own manuscript, you really stop seeing the things over and over. It's definitely a different part of your brain that you use to like create the story and make the characters come to life than it is to like sit down and be like, okay, what are the rules about commas? You know what I mean? It's just a different part of your brain. And once you've seen the manuscript 500 million times, it's hard to catch all of those things, right? I've seen a lot of newer authors have an issue with doing their own editing. And so whether you find a professional editor, whether you trade services, if you're like, hey, like I'll read your book, or whatever your situation is, however you get that editing, I would suggest you still get the editing, and that you know the credentials of the person that you're hiring to edit. Because there are people who don't understand grammar who think that they understand grammar. And I would strongly recommend you find someone who does understand it, and who has an eye for detail, and who comes with good reviews, and who can get stuff to you on time. That's another big concern with editors, is they don't always return things on time, which can be really difficult for you as the author, and I'll discuss that as we go on. But you also have timelines. I know we're indie authors, but there are still timelines. I came into this business thinking that there weren't going to be timelines, but there absolutely are. So you had your betas, they went through, you found your editor. Now while your editor is going through, there's a few things that you can do, right? There's a few things that you should be doing. You should be on social media, because you as the indie author are the only one who is going to be marketing your books. And maybe your readers will, the goal is for your readers to help you market it, right? But they also market on social media. So my recommendation would be to be very heavily involved in your community and in your social media community. And that can just mean scrolling your book community for an hour a day. You interact with what they're talking about, you see what they're talking about, you see what videos are being pushed by what algorithms. Study it. This is your job. This is your assignment and your homework. You spend as much time as you are able to. Everybody's situation is different, but spend as much time as you're able to studying your community, because you're about to be kickstarting yourself into that community. And that's what I did. When my book was with the editor, I spent a long time on social media, mostly just looking, but I also started posting. And that ended up allowing the videos that I did post about my book when it was closer to release time, a lot of them went viral, and some of that is luck, but a lot of that is because I really studied the community I was in and the platform. And so my recommendation would be to spend just as much time on your marketing as you do like on the story itself. And I know that sucks because you get into this lifestyle and you're like, oh, I want to be an author and I want to tell stories. And as an indie author, it's so much more than that. There's so much more time spent on admin and marketing and stuff like that. So while you are in your community, start to network, start to meet people, start to follow different creators, because you will be finding your cover designer and your formatter. Now, you can do both of those things yourself. I don't, because I know I suck at it. I think being a business owner requires a certain self-awareness. If you know you're not good at something and you genuinely want your business to do well, right? I would recommend that you hire people to do things that you're not good at. And not everybody has the financial liberty to do that. But I will say that your cover is so important. And I know we always say don't judge a book by its cover, right? But that's how we're programmed as human beings to operate. It's like you look at a piece of fruit and you make an instant judgment about whether that's healthy or not to eat. It's just programmed into our brains as what we do. And especially in today's day and age, there are so many books. I mean, look at all the books behind me. Most of those are mine, but there's so many, right? There's so many to pick from that it's just so easy, if we don't like the cover, to just keep swiping. And you are up against a bunch of content. And if people don't like the cover, now sometimes liking a cover could be subjective, but I have found that generally speaking, very dark covers with no contrast and very busy covers sometimes don't do well. I don't know how to describe it, because I know my weaknesses. I'm not a graphic design person. But you want something that catches people's eyes. So if you know that that's not something you can do, hire a cover designer. Cover designer charges can range. So here, this one, my cover designer is the Occult Goddess, and she charges $100 for covers, right? That is an amazing price for a cover design. Amazing. I have seen them go way higher than that. I actually have a cover that I'm coming out with. It's Make Me, and there's a model on the cover, and I actually had to pay for the model itself. So the model came from a company that basically once you purchase one of their pictures, that model is kind of yours for forever. I think I paid $1,200 for that cover, which is super expensive, and I've never paid that much for a cover ever before. And I consider myself really privileged to have been able to pay that kind of money for a cover. And the book is not out yet, so I can't tell you if it's been worth it or not, but there's where it is. Formatting, there are a few different programs, right, that you can do for yourself. I pay somebody for it because I tried multiple on my own when I started and it was unsuccessful. Depends what kind of computer you have. So if you have a Mac computer, which I do now, but if you have a Mac computer, you can use what's called Vellum, V-E-L-L-U-M. That is generally what a lot of the professionals use. It's, from what I hear, it's very easy to use. There's just a lot of details, like how much space is kept on the edge of these pages and on the edge of the inside right, so that you can still read the book when you open it up. That I don't understand, so I pay somebody to do it. If you have any other type of computer, Vellum is only supported on Mac computers. There's a program called Atticus, and then there is a program called Scrivener. I tried both Atticus and Scrivener. I'm not supported by any of these brands. I was unsuccessful with both Atticus and Scrivener. I had major issues with Scrivener not being able to create a table of contents, right? And this was over a year ago, so it could be that things have changed, but I was not able to create a table of contents, which I wanted at the time, and so that was not working for me. Atticus was also not working because, and again, I've had people had really good experiences with them, but every time I uploaded my document, right, and tried to export it into a Word doc or something else, because it usually comes as a PDF, I think. All of the coding would go wonky. So all of the letters were wrong. Everything was wrong. There were random like blank pages in the middle of the file, which obviously doesn't work. So at that point, I ended up paying somebody to do it. I found somebody online. They were extremely expensive. I spent hundreds of dollars. I want to say it was like $400 to format a book, which is quite pricey. The same girl who does my covers, she formats. And I can't remember how much. I think I pay her $100 for formatting too, for each version. So there's usually going to be a paperback, an ebook, and then if you're going to do a hardcover too, right? And then sometimes if you're going to do a Black Pages version, there's that. All of that jazz. You do not have to pay $400. I will say that. There are people out there who are more affordable for formatting. But, you know, if you're going to do it yourself, you are going to have to put down the money for the programs. I don't remember. I think Vellum is, I'm not sure. I think it's $200 to $300 for the program. And then I think Atticus was a lot cheaper than that. There are some things to keep in mind though if you are going to use them. Make sure that you have the rights to whatever images are being used, any images that you're going to pick for your books. So for instance, this one has a pancake mix and it could not be a brand. I would recommend you network. If you network, you can find cheaper people and you can find good people. You know what I mean? So as your book is being edited, there's usually going to be a few weeks at least, if not over a month, where your book is being edited. The fastest editor I've found is 6 weeks. And that even feels like a long time for me because you're so eager to get your book out, right? And 6 weeks is the fastest you can find. Yes. And that's really fast for an editor. So keep in mind that there will definitely be that wait time. If this is your first book, I would recommend not announcing your release until after you get it back from the editor. Because it being your first book, there may be things that you are going to want to change, and they may be big things, and they may take a lot longer than the time that you have. I wish that I had done that. My first book, I did everything wrong. I didn't get beta readers before I sent it to editing, and a lot of my beta readers were like, my first book is better run, and a lot of my beta readers were like, hey, I didn't feel connected to the characters. I didn't feel like you had enough development, right, of your characters. And I was like, I don't have time to fix it. That's a pretty big critique. I don't have time to fix it. And so I just published it, and guess what? The reviews said the same thing. So I ended up writing a second book, which I didn't want to, but there it is. But it needed it, right? It needed it. And I had kind of put a timeline on myself because I didn't know, and that's okay. So now you don't make that same mistake. So once you get everything on the admin side, like the figuring out how to create the book side, right? Then you are going to ideally create an ARC team. An ARC team stands for Advanced Reader Copy, and that's sometimes what these are. These are just proof copies from Amazon. Amazon's the only one that will print this, not for resale bar as far as I know. But an ARC team is basically a team of people who get your book right before release. I do mine 2 weeks before release to give everybody a chance to like read the book. That's still a pretty quick turnaround time, but most ARC readers can expect that they are going to be asked to read, like put that book on their priority list. So I do 2 weeks before, and I ask that you give a review, but it is not required. Remember, this is a symbiotic relationship between you and the people who read for you, and there are a lot of reasons sometimes that people don't give reviews. I see a lot of authors get really upset about it, and my recommendation would be to let go of some of those expectations, because your readers are people, and there are a lot of reasons they don't leave reviews. Some of them are they don't like the book and they don't want to trash your book on a review, and I find that a wonderful reason not to leave a review. Thank you very much. A lot of other reasons are I have people who come into my DMs and they're panicked and they're like, I'm so sorry, like I'm going through a divorce, I lost somebody, There are a million reasons why somebody doesn't get to it. Maybe they don't get to it on time. I personally am not worried about that. You're doing me a favor. You're reading my book and you're helping me market my book, right? And if you read it 3 months down the road, that's great. If you make a post on social media about it, that's great. Not everybody does ARCs the way that I do, but I am pretty relaxed about it. I accept anybody who wants to be on my ARC team. I allow them onto my ARC team, and I give them all e-copies of the book. There are a few platforms that you can do that through. I do mine through Bookfunnel. You can pay for multiple versions of Bookfunnel, right? Okay. So there is a version where you basically just, the Bookfunnel is like creates the distributes the link for the EPUB, which is your ebook. There's also a version where you can send them through Bookfunnel, and you do have to pay for it depending on how many copies you're sending out, but they will assign each EPUB with a specific watermark. So if your book gets plagiarized, you could tell which email you sent it to was the one who uploaded it or provided it for somebody else to upload. Plagiarism, pirating. I'm using the words interconnected. Pirating will happen, unfortunately. Think about all of the movies that are pirated before they come out, all of the artwork that is sold, that prints are sold when they don't have the rights to sell. Books are the same way, and it's wrong. It's wrong that it happens, but it will happen. So I need you to like morally prepare yourself for that right now. A lot of authors are caught off guard. There are some programs that you can use. I use a company called Muso, M-U-S-O, and they basically are a legal company that sends cease and desist letters out to organizations that have uploaded your book elsewhere. A lot of people have beef with Muso because they can't get everything removed. Keep in mind, they are just a company that sends out letters, essentially. It has worked for me 99% of the time. 99% of the time, either I reach out and I say, hey, this is on your website and it's a pirated copy, and they will take it down, or my company does and it gets taken down. There are some websites that are non-compliant with any type of legal organization that reaches out to them, and there's not a lot you can do about that. In addition, if we're going to back up, so your book is not out yet, right? You have it sent out to the ARC readers. If you want to, in addition to ARC readers, some authors have what's called a street team. A street team is a group of people who are specifically dedicated to marketing your book consistently. The ARC team is, here, I'll give you a copy of the book. You know, if you read it and you like it, can you give me a review? Otherwise, a street team is a team that posts for you, sometimes weekly. My team posts weekly. I give them more perks if you are on my street team, and it is a lot smaller. So my street team gets the proof copies, which are not available to people unless I give them to you personally. They also get PR boxes, and they post for me weekly. They will post things like cover reveals, blurb reveals. Sometimes if it's like a dead season, they'll just post, hey, have you read Alina May's books? There are a lot of people in the community, the book community, who want to be, my clock wants to be part of this, who want to be part of a street or an ARC team because they're looking to grow their own accounts, right? They're looking to grow their own social media accounts, and getting provided new exciting content from authors is a wonderful way to do that, you know, especially if you have this big buzz book. A lot of people want to be on a team to help promote that. And it's amazing. And I love all of my street team and ARC readers because I could not do what I do without them. So that's why my street team is smaller though, because I provide them with PR boxes and physical proof copies. And I cannot afford to do that for everybody who joins my ARC team, because sometimes I have hundreds of people sign up at a time, and I wish I was that rich, but one of these days. So that could be something that you look into while your book's being edited. You can look into getting a street team. And if you are curious about uploading on Amazon, I will be uploading a separate video talking about Amazon, because it's relatively easy to manage, but there are some things that you might not know unless somebody who has done it before will tell you. I will walk you through all of those things. Remember to write the damn book, to find somebody who could do an edit to tell you what their thoughts are on the characters, what the plot holes are, all of the big picture stuff you're going to get in reviews later, whether that's a developmental editor or a beta reader. If you are going to have a beta reader, I would suggest having an author be a beta reader, but that is up to you. And then to find somebody to network in your community, to find somebody in that community who can do cover design and or formatting if you are not comfortable doing it yourself, or if you just acknowledge that you don't have the skill set to do it yourself. Create an ARC and or street team. If you, for marketing, I would really strongly suggest do not skip that step. I've talked to people who do, and it can be very hard to get your book out into the world if you are the only one marketing. Now, if you have a million videos going viral, maybe you can skip that step. Probably don't want to, but maybe you can. You upload it on Amazon, and then bam, here you are. I'm going to emphasize very heavily that you stay so involved in your community. That is how I went from being a absolute newbie to the world to being an international bestseller with my first book. I know that doesn't happen to everybody, and I know a lot of it was, I consider myself extremely lucky, but I did put a lot of heart, sweat, tears into that process and into learning social media and learning my community and marketing my book. So just so you know, you are not alone. There, I had no idea what I was doing, and yet I was still able to succeed. So I'm here to help you guys succeed. Let me know if there's any questions you have. Let me know if there's something that you want more details on, and I will make a video about how to work Amazon.